Humans, hello humans. It's Friday, November 21, 7:12 a.m. Heidi's up. This is always good when she's up early. Anyway, so it's interesting times, interesting beyond, for more, much more interesting for some people than others. We're at a point where we are starting to have echoes here, historical echoes. We're coming into I guess it's going to be like there's two historical periods, echoes of two historical periods that are going to be smushed together for all of us living now. This is necessary because it's at a normal cycle point and also a termination of a larger cycle. So basically what I'm going to describe here is a situation that we're in now where we're due for another depression relative to the Central Bank of the United States, the Federal Reserve, and its creation of fake money out of thin air and all of the influences that and repercussions of that. Okay, so this is a cycle. We should be going into a depression. Should have happened this year, next year, etc., leading up to about 2030. This is part of the plan of the World Economic Forum and the UN and all of these other motherfuckers. Okay, so they want to take advantage of that. They know the cycle is here. They're just going to exacerbate it where they need to and then ride the emotional wave to greater and greater levels of control. That's their plan. It's not going to work for a bunch of different reasons. Okay, so that's the a cycle that last time we were in these kind of depressive situations was 1933. So you see we're at over 100-year cycle there. Coming into this period, right? Now, fiat currencies have a known lifespan. Most of them, unbacked fiat currencies, die within 56 years of their creation, or they so morph that they're no longer recognizable, and this is what's happening. Trump, in my opinion, Trump and his people are fighting against several large forces going on. The economic forces, the political forces that are associated with them that would want the United States to become either broken up or communist, so that they can get better levels of control. And also then there's the very much larger cycles and forces involving space aliens and all of that kind of crap, right? So there's all of these huge things that Trump is having to deal with. One of them at the moment is the economic aspect, as we're seeing with Bitcoin. All right, so hang on a second. This all relates to Bitcoin. So, well, a lot of it relates to Bitcoin. Anyway, so these cycles are ongoing. Right at this moment, we're at a cycle we're at the end of the Federal Reserve Bank. Okay, this is this last period where the Federal Reserve Bank will be faded out. It'll follow the same progression as the end of the second bank. That happened in 1833, 192 years ago or something like that. Hang on. 1833. Okay, so in 1833, the central bank, at the time called the Second Bank, was killed by President Andrew Jackson. All right, he did not allow it to be rechartered. He vetoed that bill. So a single man saved the country at that point because the political process had been corrupted. That sounds familiar. And lots of the politicians had been purchased by the banking interests. That sounds familiar. Big echo there. And here we are at the same thing, repeating it all over. Well, a single person saved the United States then, President Andrew Jackson. He vetoed the the renewal of the charter of the central bank. And so it wasn't chartered and it had to go private. And it wasn't able to sustain itself without the federal government effectively stopping the competition, which were state-chartered banks, and then also enforcing the primacy of it. And so once he did that, it ended. Now, it took it another 3 years before it really got into deep problems, and it caused huge problems in the United States with the largest land speculation effort ever and one of the largest depressions as a result of that, all of which, leads up to the owners of the central bank, the British banks, flooding the United States with money in order to cause the split in the United States and the Civil War. So that was all engineered by the bankers. So the banks came under pressure in 1833 when the central bank couldn't renew. By 1836, we'd had the speculative boom of Western land where over 20 million acres were sold. That's going to come back up, by the way, in this particular cycle in a huge way. Maybe 4 years from now. And it's going to alter the relationship of the people to the power structures. Okay, so then in 1837, we had a huge... So I think we're actually close to 1836, okay? I think we're actually close to the point where the Federal Reserve will have its deposits, quote, from the federal government removed. I think that will be I think Trump's following a particular theme or plan within our current battle with the Federal Reserve and the other world central banks. I think his plan will, to some degree, echo what Jackson did. Jackson's plan was very well conceived. I won't go into it, but he had this advisor that laid this stuff out for him, and it worked very well. Okay, so the 1 year after the second bank's charter expired, the U.S. plunged into a depression. We're getting into this period now. Okay, so we still have a Federal Reserve. It still has a, quote, charter, but it's not structured the way the second bank was. These bankers learn. And so when they hoaxed the United States into taking the Federal Reserve on as a private bank lending money to the country in 1913, they had it structured differently. So we're not going to go through the exact same thing, but the tactics still work. And I think we're coming up close to a point where there will be effectively no renewal of charter for the Federal Reserve. And I think that'll happen over the next 6 to 8 months. You'll see it in minor legislation, not anything big. It's not sneaky, but they're not going to be advertising what's going on. And then we're going to get, and we're into it now, the early stages of this depression. I think we'll also have a banking panic, okay? That's a secondary issue, right? Those are brief, those happen, the banks die, there's all kinds of stuff to sort out, and then we'll be heading into a depression. It's going to be a very unusual depression because it's not going to be generally effective. That is to say, in a sense, it'll be like the breakout of tech in the late 90s, where there were many industries that were being sold off to China wholesale, old industries in the U.S. where we'd sell the whole fucking factory to somebody in China and they'd come and disassemble it and pack it off. But we were getting into the new high-tech industries at that point in a serious way. I think we're approaching something like that. So we're going to be in a transition stage. During this period, we'll see a lot of older economic construction within the United States fall away and new stuff come in. Everything from new manufacturing to new types of manufacturing to new industries to new sciences, all different kinds of stuff are going to be emerging during the period of this depression. Now, Trump today said buy Bitcoin. All right, I'm going to echo that. Okay, I own Bitcoin, so I have a vested interest in its price, but I don't give a shit. I'm diversified. I can always manufacture in my mind something that will allow me to create value, and that gives me wealth. Okay, so I'm not worried. But he tweeted out buy Bitcoin, and let me tell you that in my so I was one of the first people to tell you to go buy Bitcoin. There are perhaps 2, 3, 4, who knows, hundreds of people that are millionaires because they bought into cryptos when I advised it, before anybody had it on their radar. Throughout that entire period of time, the descriptor sets in my large language model AI always focused on the idea of Bitcoin being the method for government to government and international corporation to international corporation settlements for very large purchases, debts, contracts, etc. And so it always focused on the idea of the Bitcoin being used as a carrier of big money. And that's still in the future. We haven't seen that yet. I suspect over the next few years, relative to the current U.S. federal dollar, we will see Bitcoin exceed maybe $1 million each. I don't know. It's going to be very much valuable. However, there's going to be another metric in here. The current U.S. Federal Reserve dollar, the species, the Federal Reserve note, because it's a debt instrument. It's not actually a currency, or it's not actually money. There's going to be a competitor for that will be arising. All right. I think it's going to be a Treasury issued dollar. All right. Both digital and physical in some form, although I think it'll be some kind of I won't go into that. Anyway, a Treasury issued dollar. This Treasury issued dollar will compete with the Federal Reserve note. When it's issued, you're going to see a weird thing happen. So when it's issued, if you wanted to be speculative, me personally, I'm going to convert as many Federal Reserve notes as I can at that time into the new Treasury issued dollar. So I'm basically going to dump the fucking bank, the Federal Reserve Bank, get all of my funds that I've got, which is not all that much anyway, convert it over to it, right? And wait for the progress of things, because the Federal Reserve Bank is dying. It can't sustain itself. There's no possibility of life in a few years for it. If we model it on the time of Andrew Jackson, it'll take 13 years for the Federal Reserve Bank to die. So if the stuff I expect to happens this in the next 8 months, that is to say by June of 2026 here, just ahead of the 250-year celebration, if the stuff I expect does happen in this period of time, then it sort of starts a clock ticking. And so I don't think that the Federal Reserve Bank will live much beyond 13 years, won't exist much beyond 13 years. However, it will fade off to irrelevance in maybe as little as, say, 3 years or 4 years. Not very much time at all. Okay, so, sorry, had an interruption there. Food stuff and things. Anyway, so we're going to get into this period of time that's going to replicate much of the turmoil of the late 1800s, or the mid-1800s that led up to the Civil War. Okay, and they were connected. There was the British banks that had been thrown out because they were the backers of the second bank. They decided to try and reclaim their prize, so they engineered the split of the USA just the way they engineered the split of Korea later, Vietnam, all of these countries, right? It's like a plan, a playbook. They're trying to use it again here now. It's not going to work. Anyway, so quickly, I got to get to things. I'm of the opinion that Bitcoin is really solid and now is a tremendous buying opportunity, because I know that all my data had never wavered. And it's been really good so far. I said it would hit 100,000 when everybody else said you're full of shit. And I mean, like a decade early. And we did, and here we are now, right? And it's fallen down, and this is due to the pressures that are being put on the banking structure, the Federal Reserve banking structure, the debt, the corporations, all of that. The derivatives, all of these things are under such huge pressure that they have to sell. There are many people that are in a position of having to sell whatever they possibly can to raise Federal Reserve notes in order to try and keep themselves afloat against the crashing of the value versus the debt within the overall system that is affecting their operations. So a lot of corporations are involved in this at the moment. It's going to get a lot worse. It's going to get quite strange, because we have these other factors being put in. We've been through this before, so the powers that be on all the different factions and sides are positioning themselves, getting ready for the next moves and stuff. I don't do financial advice. Bitcoin's not a financial instrument anyway, but I'm not selling. And it's in my opinion, it's a buying opportunity. We'll see how it all works out. I'm not particularly worried about that. We will have economic ramifications from the current Federal Reserve Bank dying. That's what's ongoing at the moment. They're trying to do everything they can to keep themselves afloat and prevent the loss of power. And this is the ultimately the prompt for all of these financial moves is the loss of power here. There is an interesting asymmetric intrusion into this particular crisis in the form of the Three-Eye Atlas, the speculation about, even within science at a serious level, about contact with non-human intelligence. That's going to be a very interesting aspect of this because it's going to get larger as we go along. And it will have many unpredictable effects because we've never been here. So we'll be getting into some real novel territory with this. But as I say, this was just, Heidi's up. We've got to go and do things here, so get things done. So this was just a quick little audio to let you know on the order of don't panic, right? We're into the bank wars. It's going to be vicious. It's going to be ugly, but it's going to take a decade to work through this. So it's not like you got to freak out today, right? You can make plans, see how things go, and ease into the whole bank war period. And I'll get into this in some detail in the future here, just not today. Okay. There you go, guys. Buy Bitcoin.